We've got Rotus Adiri here. Rotus, how's it going? Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Thud. Thank you. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Mr. K. Good morning to all our viewers. So I just decided to come up with a segment called The Numbers. Jay-Z always said that men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. Quick pop quiz. You guys want to take a pop quiz. Which Nigerian president since 1999 has spent the most money on fuel subsidies? Is it President Yar'Adua? May he rest in peace. B, President Jonathan. C, President Buhari. D, President Obasanjo. Anyone want to take a stab at that?
C. President BB. Call him President BB.
So I put
President MP.
I put the poll on my, and most of Twitter got it correct. 77% said President Buhari. Yes, 6% said President Yar'Adua. 13% said Jonathan.
Don't get prizes for guessing this correctly.
Maybe there will be implications.
You promise so. Hold you accountable.
Maybe.
No, don't say maybe. Commit to it.
We commit. I'll take the money from fuel subsidies.
Wait, don't be like that. Don't be like that.
No, but look at this number. This is I was, and shout out to Steers and which wrote an article on this. I got it from NATI, the Extractive Industry Transparency Industry Initiative. President Buhari in 8 years spent 12.4 trillion naira on fuel subsidies. That is more than the amount of money of President Obasanjo, Yar'Adua, and Jonathan spent between 1999 and 2014. It is a staggering amount of money. It is enough. I'm thinking of starting my own death protest in the streets. If you put this thing in perspective,
I'll join you on that,
please, I'm calling on everybody.
We'll carry placards. We need to go protest.
If you add the budget for 2016 and 2017, the amount he spent, 12.4 trillion, is 91% of that combined amount. Basically, it comes to about, I think, 13.1 trillion. So you are 1 trillion away from the combined budget of those years. It's greater than our 2021 and 2022 revenues combined. We brought in 5.1 trillion in 2021. I estimated 5.6 in 2022. And you join it together, that's 10.7. So it's over 2 trillion than that amount. If you convert it to dollars, we've been talking so much about how much we need in FX, right? At the I&E rates that closed yesterday was 770. It comes to $16.1 billion. I mean, it really is a staggering amount of money. And when you think about borrowings, it impacts how much we borrowed. By the way, there's an update on Ways and Means. Shout out to Tilewa Adebajo, who's been on this matter of CFG advisory. He pointed this figure out to me, so I went to the CBN website to go and check. Ways and Means, because I was calculating 23 trillion as at the end of 2022. It has now ballooned to 27.5 trillion as at March. So the CBN data is at March. What month are we in? We are in August. So between the end of 2022 and 3 months into 2023, you've added another 4 trillion, right? And so, my calculation, remember I put up this calculation, I have to now revise these numbers because I was doing 5.6 trillion total public debt. That CBN overdraft of 23.18, I now have to increase that by another 4 trillion to 27, which means your 69.4 trillion debt, if you add 70, 71, 72, is now 73 trillion, right? And this is funds that at some point it will impact everything. Whether you want to go to war with Niger, whether you want to increase reduce youth unemployment, anything you want to do, the debt is going to hang around your neck. So it is just a staggering amount of money. We move on for that. What other numbers do we have? Okay. So Business Day has a pretty interesting article today where they were looking at the oil revenues of Nigeria's peers, right? So if you take the half-year revenues of Sonatrach, which is the NNPC equivalent in Algeria, they brought in $21 billion just January to May in oil and gas revenues. In Libya, that is facing war and has factions, National Oil Corporation, 6.95 billion. This is half year, right? So I annualize. If you want to annualize it and you take a look at, if Sonatrach repeats what they did in the first 5 months of this year, and you just estimate and say 6 months and take it through the year, they will bring in $42 billion, which is more than our gross reserves, not even removed. That is, if you add up everything CBN borrowed, it won't even come up to what Sonatrach will be making this year. As for Libya, they would have about almost $14 billion. We are yet to see numbers from the NNPC. So when you talk about defending the naira, I think Chika Mbono, a Rice business analyst, has said that President Tinubu should declare a state of emergency in the oil and gas industry because one, aging infrastructure, two, oil theft, and funny enough, we have of course the news of our former petroleum minister in the UK coming up on charges and heading to trial. But you think about the corruption, the theft, the aging infrastructure that is affecting our common wealth, that should be allowing us to defend the currency and do so many other things. In fact, if you want, you could. I mean, Obasanjo had what, $60 billion in reserves. You could do all the subsidies you want. You could whatever you want because you were able to defend the currency. So that's just what our peers are doing. There's an article. I want to just talk about the industrialization and this dollarization of the economy. There is. I think it's above the masthead, today's this day, where the CBN is saying that banks should not be using dollars to back naira loans. Because I think there was a circular they sent, or a warning they sent to Wema Bank or so. But the reason why all these banks are doing this is because of, I guess, fears of currency. They're basically using dollar collateral to back up naira loans. But again, it feeds into the whole narrative around where we're going. As long as we're import dependent, you'll continue to see these actions. What else is going on? Okay, BRICS. Jim O'Neill, who is the economist, the Goldman Sachs economist that coined the term BRICS, has said that the idea that you would want to create a regional currency is frankly ridiculous. And it needs to be said that at least 3 of the economies in BRICS are struggling a lot. So what? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Out of those 5, only Brazil, and that's Narendra Modi right there, India, Apple just opened 2 stores in their country recently. Only Brazil and India are on what you would call a stable trajectory. The legislature in Brazil, in fact, they recently just approved higher spending for Brazil's president. There he is, Mr. Lula da Silva, because he wants to spend more. But he can spend more because Brazil has oil, Brazil has sugar, Brazil produces parts for planes, for aeroplanes. They're in the aerospace, and shout out to Festus Keyamo. I hear he is of course the Minister for Aviation and the Aerospace, so we'll see what he does there. But Russia, the ruble is tanking. Rufai broke the news here where they had that emergency meeting where they hiked their interest rates because the ruble is falling. Sanctions are impacting them. China, have we not gone through all the issues? China is in deflationary territory. They have stopped producing youth unemployment numbers over 20-something%. Their property sector is in the toilet. Evergrande has declared bankruptcy protection. Country Garden might go the same way. In fact, there's a story in the Financial Times today. The US is asking China to be more upfront and transparent about what's going on in this economy because many people don't even believe the numbers there. And then South Africa. ESCOM has pretty much destroyed the South African economy to where the Reserve Bank of South Africa has said that economic growth is like 0.1%. Check any metric as far as growth. They are in trouble, right? So, I don't know, this whole talk of wanting to take over the dollar, regional currencies, check the trade numbers of each of those countries. Most of them are in dollars anyway. So, look, BRICS, as far as the reality of what they're facing now, there are a lot of challenges. But that's our updates for today.
So a couple of things. I think I have an answer to what you posted about subsidy. The answer for you is corruption, corruption, corruption. Pure and simple, corruption. What it just shows you that there was a lot of corruption under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, only to think he said he was going to fight corruption. Pure and simple. I also get the argument, yes, most of the wells are aging. A lot of the wells are aging. There's been no real investment because most of our foreign direct investment used to come through the oil sector in this country. Investment in the oil sector and the likes. Most of the wells are aging. And it just shows you the unprecedented corruption. You see, so this is the argument a lot of people are making. Why don't you fight the corruption that is being perpetrated under the leader? Because all of a sudden, we all want to look away from that. Have we ever asked those in charge that how come that most of the oil we import are going away through our borders? You say, oh, you can't man the borders, you can't man the borders. It's not in this country that Charles Taylor tried to run away through the borders. Didn't they find him? So if they could find Charles Taylor, you can't find a full 33,000 tanker. There's connivance across board with the customs authorities and those in authority. Because when you also look at one stats that remains you didn't put there, Rotus, is let's put the number of cars. How did they increase in Nigeria over the years? Since Obasanjo said, you want to say we've added 20 more million cars tonight. Do we have close to 20 million cars in Nigeria?
No. Nope.
So why are the people drinking the fuel? It's just because these people became emboldened and they were taking the fuel across our border. So we've not added a colossal amount of cars. So where is the consumption? Corruption is the consumption. And that's why we keep saying President Buhari should also account for what happened under his administration. Pure and simple. If this APC government is sincere with Nigerians, they should ask the president to also account. Just like you talked about the extra 4 trillion they printed between December and this time. The question is, what did they do with the money up to March? And I'm sure if you further the record now to August,
it's almost 30 trillion.
It's almost 30 trillion already.
Maybe more.
So that means we are printing the money on steroids. When Godwin Obaseki said we're printing money, didn't the CBN come out and say, no, he's lying. So all the money they are printing, all this money they are printing, there is God, oh. There is God, oh. There is God, oh.
No, but just a quick point, George. So it's just don't forget, they use the CRR, the cash reserve ratio. They've sterilized funds from the banking sector, so they use most of that to fund the government. But there is a level of printing, and again, if you remember, where else do we get the money at this point? We've always spent. But I'll go right ahead. It's really tough. It's a tough situation.
They should go and bring out all the corruption money that they oversaw. They should go and bring it out. All the corruption money. Yes, I understand your question. Where are we going to get the money? All the corruption money, they should bring it out.
In terms of auditing and probing the last administration, I don't know where that's going to go because it's still the same APC administration. So we had to put that in. It was an APC government in the last 8 years. So let's stop removing the fact that it's now a President Buhari administration. It was President Buhari under the APC. But I have a question with regards to the numbers you showed. Would the foreign exchange rate, dollar to naira, affect those numbers? Because under President Goodluck Jonathan's tenure, and President Buhari's tenure, the exchange rate dollar to naira was almost tripled. So would that not have affected the amount paid in subsidies in terms of the reflection of those numbers?
Yeah, of course. So if for subsidy, we paid almost 9.7 billion, almost 10 billion in subsidies in 2022. That comes out to about 4 trillion. So that was at the exchange rate of 416 or 417. So the thing is, if you just, the thing is to look at the numbers today, so it's opportunity cost. If you hadn't spent all this money on fuel subsidies, what would you be able to use this money for? Could have gone to fund your budget. You could have built more schools. You could have done job creation. You could have done so many other things. But the thing is that we are where we are today, including corruption, of course. We are where we are today because personal finance, you have to understand where your revenues are and your spending habits. You must cut spending, raise revenue in order to flow up, to support your government.
In addition to cutting spending, you must block corruption because that's what, again, I must emphasize it's not just the spending on subsidy, it's also corruption.
So the thing is this, so the thing is, when we talk about corruption, right, we really should try and put a number to it. Remember, I think it was the United Nations or was it the World Bank that said that between 1969 and 1998, 400 billion or so was stolen, and that was mostly under the military regime. So that's the 400 billion, that's the Nigerian economy size in GDP. Yeah. So we're still getting loot from Abacha till today. So you now have to compare between 1999 and 2023 and take Dasuki, Daizani, add up all the even cases that have not been yet, add that up, compare it to the 400 billion during the military regime. Do you have a higher figure or not? So those are the kind you have to put numbers to it and then argue that this, so that's
let me just quickly give you some more numbers. NATI released a report recently. They were talking about daily crude oil loss from 2009 to 2020. That's corruption money.
Yeah.
46.16 billion.
Right.
Or 16.25 trillion. Unaccounted.
So that's $1 billion versus trillion naira, right?
Yeah. So 16.25 trillion naira, $46.16 billion.
Right.
That's from 2009 to 2020. That's NATI. They released a report recently, and they said that Nigeria lost over 619.7 million barrels of crude oil, valued at that amount.
And
corruption.
We need
Unfortunately, we don't have time. But two things I'll just mention. With regards BRICS, all the points you made is exactly the same thing that America is going through. The economy is in trouble. Biden is in trouble. There is a possibility that he might even end up...
America's economy is in trouble?
No. I don't mean their economy is in trouble.
Okay.
I mean that when you look at what is going on in China and the rest of it.
Right.
It's not a case of, oh, America's economy is in the best position such that it's infallible. It's not infallible. So in view of that, it means that, yes, China and the rest of them have problems. America has its own problems.
Let them come up with the currency. Let's see the currency.
No, yes, it's going to be almost impossible. But with corruption, we'll take the conversation later.
Thank you very much, Ruth.
Thank you so much.